my story begins around 10 years ago when I was having some minor elective surgery done that meant spending some quality time in the presence of a urologist.
Okay.
I'll just apologize for the TMI for our more sensitive listeners, but it is relevant.
Sounds like you'd had enough kids at that point.
Yes.
All right, keep going.
So Intuitive Surgical had already been on our scorecard for around 4 years at that point. But if you recall 2009, you'll know I wasn't the only person feeling pretty vulnerable that day. The market was in disarray. It seemed like everything could just drop forever. And Intuitive Surgical had been a multi-bagger for us. You know, and you probably remember this well. This is one of your many great picks. Our Rule Breakers original cost point was just under $15 a share. Right, and the stock had run up to a high of around 120, so it had gone up like eightfold, and then just dropped way back to the point that I think it got back down to around 30. So it was still, it was a nice winner for us. But boy, we had just, a lot of money had been taken off.
Yeah, down about 75% doesn't feel good, even when you still have a two-bagger.
Right, and to make it perhaps worse than that, it was actually by 2009, it was a 4-time recommendation. And I think one or maybe two of those positions were actually losing money at this point. And anyway, so since I had some time on my hands, I was asking the urologist about the Da Vinci system, since he also did other kinds of surgery. And I wanted to know about its uses. And at the time, you may also recall that really the Da Vinci was finding its way in prostatectomy, which is the surgical removal of the prostate. And wasn't really being used for, a whole lot else in volume, but that was really where it was finding a home. And this urologist who did those surgeries told me, no, it's a flash in the pan. It doesn't really doesn't let you do anything that a competent surgeon can't do himself. The machines are expensive. You use a lot of expensive accessories with them. And it's just, it still requires a lot of the same expertise and training, and it's not gonna be successful.
Now I remember that, and that was I'm not going to say that was the party line, because the medical world is full of many different viewpoints and different practitioners and professionals, but it wasn't uncommon back then, and even still sometimes we hear today, Carl, from people who are surgeons in the field who say, that robot is not necessary, it's expensive. By the way, it might not be something I'm trained on, it might be disrupting my whole field, and maybe I've been around for a few decades doing the work. But regardless, that was back then, I would say, much more probably the dominant viewpoint. It sounded disruptive and a little crazy to have a surgeon use the Da Vinci surgical robot, which was Intuitive Surgical's big product.
Right. And that's, so sitting there or, thinking about this, this is a person obviously with an expert opinion and has a heck of a lot more reason than I do to know where the field is going. So it's, that's an influential thing to hear. But, I ultimately, and I hate to say this, but I small f foolishly, I have never personally owned Intuitive Surgical. But, I was really trying to think about the best way to cover it for members. And we talked about it on the boards at the time, but I ultimately decided that this is just a single data point. Let's dismiss it. This was a guy who was entrenched in a way of doing things. He has a lot of investment in the expertise that he's already gotten, and I'm glad to say that he proved to be a very competent surgeon. But he wasn't, he wasn't a known thought leader in the field maybe you would weigh a little more heavily at that. So I ultimately ended up deciding this is a blip. Don't take it too seriously. Listen, obviously, put it out there, let people talk about it, but don't take it too seriously. And I don't have to say that the Da Vinci did not turn out to be just about doing urological procedures. It's used for a lot more than that.
That's right.
And B, the stock is over $500 today. But, I think about this because it's come up actually with our most recent recommendation, Shockwave Medical, which just went out. And I have heard both expert opinions from heart surgeons, both for and against already. And I am very interested to hear what those opinions are and why. But, it's not going to necessarily weigh too heavily until it really becomes more than a single data point.
So maybe I can guess at it, Carl, but what's the big one-line takeaway for listeners?
One expert opinion is still just one data point.
And, part of the benefit of the discussion boards that we've hosted on Fool.com for a few decades now is that a lot of us do just have one data point. It might be our own opinion, or it might be a professional in our life, a lawyer, a money manager, or in this case, a doctor. And it's hard for us to know what anybody else thinks of things until we start to use social media or discussion boards, join in a community. The Fool community is a great one for me anyway, and hear other people's viewpoints. So I think ultimately the reason that we recommended Intuitive Surgical in the first place is because we heard a wider array of viewpoints and started to realize that this disruptive technology really might change the world. And I'm really happy to say, yeah, you're right. The stock had gone right from 15, where we recommended it, to 120, as you mentioned, then down to 50 at the time you were having that conversation. And today it's $500 a share. So it has absolutely rocked. So thank you for that lesson, Carl. I really do believe that a single data point is just that. And I think we owe it to ourselves, especially with our money in our portfolios, to seek more opinions, sometimes ones that might surprise us or be different from our own. All right, so Intuitive Surgical, Carl, your title, Disruption Surprises Nearly Everyone, especially the disrupted. Thank you very much for joining me once again on Rule Breaker Investing.
Thank you.